so she came up to me one day. She said, Judith, do you realize what you found? And I went, what do you mean? She said, you have found the rocket of spirituality. I want to learn from the person I know lives what they preach. The more you can forget yourself, the more you're there for other people. I used to feel life was so bleak, and now life is magical, and even beyond life is magical.
Welcome to KanaCast, a series of conversations with residents and visitors to Kanha Shantivana, the International Heartfulness Center near Hyderabad, Telangana, India. In this episode, Emma Ivaturi is speaking to Judith Nelson. Judith is a heartfulness trainer and also heartfulness coordinator for Europe. She has a background in physiotherapy and broadcasting and is a regular contributor to the Heartfulness Magazine and to the website The World Moms Network.
Judith, it's really nice to meet you here in Kanha for the first time. I think we have been on a few conference calls together.
Yeah, we have.
And that's what I love about this place is that people from all over the world that you've seen or here and there, you come together. So this is your first time in how long?
Actually, we haven't been for 6 years, which is probably the longest ever that I've not been in India. So it's been a long time coming. I'm so happy to be here.
How has it been for you? So much has changed since you've come, I imagine.
I think that was one of the nice things about leaving at 6 years, that the transformation is just unbelievable. And I think for me, what it really felt like was, if this can be established in 6 years, what is the hope for, the rest of humanity? It was just like an incredible story of hope for me. So yeah, it's been wonderful. And last time we were here, I think just the dorms, the comfort dorms had just been finished, literally the day before. And then coming back and looking at everything, it's totally transformed.
Were you here before any edifices were there?
Yeah.
And it was just, yes.
Yeah, it was very, very, very basic. The meditation halls hadn't been built, and there were no real sort of main, there was, I think, maybe one main road or something. So yeah, it's huge, but it's also extraordinary because, you can go places after 6 years and there's no change, but here it just feels like this incredible amount of greenery has sprung up, and just it feels like a town, but a really unusual town, really lovely town, So yeah, a joy.
That's what I tell people when I tell them that I'm coming, because we're married here, my husband and I, when it was just a road and a few edifices, and to see every year how much it changes, new buildings, taller plants. And what has been the highlight of your visit so far?
Well, we were very, very fortunate that we went to have dinner with Dadji, which was just lovely, actually. And we met some really lovely people there as well, some American ladies who were here to help publish Dadji's latest book.
Some of the publishers.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So they're promoting the book, and that was great as well. So I think that's the thing, that not only did we have a lovely evening with Dadji, and he did a recording with one of them as well, an interview with one of them, but we also got to meet people from, the other side of the world as well. And that's the other beauty, isn't it, of Kanha? It's the UN, isn't it, really? Everybody from all over the world can come, and it's so lovely that
And
way.
you're from the UK yourself?
Yeah, Scotland.
Scotland.
I
Okay.
have to say Scotland. Yeah, also I'll get into trouble with my family. But yeah, we come from the UK. Scotland, live north of Dundee, but we've been living in Edinburgh for a long time as well. So most people will know Edinburgh because it's our capital.
And you grew up in Scotland?
I had a very strange upbringing because I started life in England. And then when I was...
Because your accent is very
It's very neutral,
yes.
yeah. We moved to Canada, and I had 2 years in Canada. Then we moved to Switzerland, and I had 5 years in Switzerland as a child. So I actually grew up speaking French as a child. And then we moved to Scotland when I was 11. And I've been more or less there since, just, yeah.
So what was your life growing up in various countries, and what was kind of the overall tone or the feeling of your family growing up?
I think the funny thing was I never felt at home anywhere because, going from England to Canada, we were different and felt a bit alien. And then going to Switzerland, we were even more different. And then going to Scotland after that, we were still different. We had different accents. We looked different. We felt different. But it was what was wonderful. And I was so grateful for it. And later in my life, because, it's so much easier to see things in hindsight. I realized that I had lots of experiences as a child that many people don't get. So I went to different schools. The one in Switzerland in particular was an extraordinary school because it was very very different. We were in school with people who were incredibly wealthy from, backgrounds like Charlie Chaplin's children went there, sort of film stars and people like that put their children in these schools. So we were mixing with people who were infinitely more wealthy than we were. But it helped me to really realize quite a few things as a very young child. As I say, I left there at 11. And I remember having these thoughts of what is the point of this life, even maybe around about 7, 8, because it was so clear to me that wealth didn't make you happy. That was one thing. The first thing that I think I had this huge realization that all these people had so much money, but they weren't necessarily happy. And I watched their parents and I thought, they're not comfortable, they're not happy. So money isn't it. Money is not the source of your happiness. And I found there was quite a lot of boundaries in Switzerland for me as well, which I think once I moved to Scotland, I felt the UK is a little bit more chaotic, and so that was
the
quite
Druid influence.
Yeah, it was quite interesting because I felt a little bit unleashed then, a bit freed up, because we were in quite a strict school in Switzerland. It was very, very sort of rule based because it was also a convent. So
did you grow up with a Catholic background? Or?
Yes, I started life as a Catholic, and I admire people who can stay in Catholicism and grow. But for me, I always said to people, I think I needed meditation because I needed more help. I would admit that some people maybe can do it through those sorts of backgrounds, but it just didn't work for me because I was wondering about what is the point of this life. I thought there's no point being here unless I'm going to understand it. And I was probably a bit precocious. I used to ask some really hard questions of my parents. And I'll go on to this in a minute, but I used to ask them questions and nobody could answer them. And I thought, what's the point in this if you can't answer my questions? And I also had this insight that I felt like I was sitting in church going, you're getting it wrong. I mean, how egocentric, hey, but you get, this is not surely what Christ was talking about. What he was talking about was be like me. Don't just follow me blindly, but become like me. We should aspire to rise up, to be so much better. And I think that really sank in. And then when I moved back to Scotland, I had friends who were in different faith groups or whatever, and I was interested in going to see what are you doing? And my best friend in Scotland, who I met when I was in college, she also had a very curious sort of nature, and she now meditates as well. She meditates in Heartfulness too. So we really hit it off, and we were just so keen to explore. But I would say I went all the way through my 20s before I really found what I was looking for. And in the meantime, I would think I was extremely challenging for a few people. Like when we were sharing this recently, when we were having marriage preparation and with the priest, and he was sort of quizzing, not quizzing, but asking questions and saying things. I was so probably so difficult for him. I was challenging everything he said, and like, how can you tell me about marriage? You've never even been married, and just
Fair enough.
anything he said, I was challenging this poor man. So much so that after 2 sessions, he said, "It's okay, don't come back." So I felt a bit bad after that, but I think it was that sort of, I want to learn from the person I know lives what they preach, lives, everything that I was looking for, someone who could also really help me change. I was aware that I couldn't do that myself. I think that was what I gained mostly from my sort of early journey.
So at what point did you feel that the lack of resonance with what you were hearing was you've had enough and you were looking for something else? At what point was there that shift consciously?
I think what I did in my 20s, I looked for all the things which were supposed to make you happy. And I got all of them and I wasn't happy.
Which things?
So things like, really lovely husband. He is a lovely husband. Money, position. I worked as a broadcaster, and once I started to be recognized, I pulled back. I thought, I don't like this. But I even had that. So, I knew everything I did it didn't fulfill me. It didn't make me happy. And then the sort of pivotal moment was after having my first child, because that was the next thing. People were like, oh, maybe you should have kids, which I left off for a long time. And even then I thought, no, as much as I loved my child, it just wasn't the thing that I was looking for. And, you can't live through someone else. So that was the point at which I sort of really asked for guidance. And we ended up moving abroad, and for a little while we moved to the Basque Country, and we went to a place called Loyola, which is where Saint Ignatius lived. He was a very famous warrior of his time and very aristocratic man, and he was very badly injured. And while he was injured, he was in bed and had to recuperate. And while he was doing that, he was so frustrated, but he had the realization that the real fight really is actually with yourself. And fight is not a good word, but the real, battle or to be overcome is the one of the self. So we went, and I kind of had. We went to visit this place, and I had a real moment of enlightenment there. Just realized, sort of reading through his thing, it was like something happened. I can't quite describe it, but it was like a real sense of enlightenment. That's okay, this is my path, this is my goal. I need to find a practice. So first of all, I think I was looking for a person, but then I realized, practice is important. So when we went back to Scotland, I went to visit Mother Mira because my sister had been, and to see her. And again, she said, come, I think you'll find this really good, really helpful. So I went asking for a practice of her. And when it was an extraordinary experience. But when I came back to Scotland, I opened a book, and I found a leaflet that I'd picked up for what was, Heartfulness was Sage Marg at the time. And I thought, this is for me. It's here, it's in Scotland. Because I sort of loved Paramahansa Yogananda's books, and I thought, maybe Kriya Yoga is right. But I was kind of led to the practice as such. And when I'd gone to see Mother Mira, I experienced quite a strange feeling in my head, like a sort of a tingling or something. And as I drew up outside the trainer's house in Scotland, I got the same feeling in my head. And I thought, okay, this must be a sign. So that's when I started Heartfulness. So I was about 34 at the time. Yeah.
And so what do you feel like kind of checked the box for you? You said you were drawn to it. So how did you know that this was the thing for you?
Well, it's quite funny how silly we are, and I put my hand up to that. I think I was in it for quite a few years before I really realised, I did start to change quite quickly, but I then had my son when I'm trying to think, I might have started 2 or 3 years by that time. And I had to stop practice because I was so sick. I was so unwell all throughout the pregnancy. But what I did instead was I used the remembrance of the teacher at the time, of Charity, who was the teacher of the time, to get me through this. And I felt hugely supported. So at that point, I didn't really, I didn't question anything or think that, I still felt like I was very much in the right place. But when my son was born, I got some strange advice, and I thought I couldn't meditate with him in the room, and he was quite a restless baby. So I ended up stopping meditation for a while, and being a bit sort of probably overtired, which you will understand. I started to question, well, is this the right path? If I can't do this, is it, even though it was so interesting, the whole time I was pregnant, I realized afterwards, I actually kept moving despite, not practicing it. There was definitely change. There was definitely growth, but I couldn't kind of put 2 and 2 together at that point, probably because I was so exhausted.
The second one changes things.
Yeah. So it took. I stepped away from the practice for a little while, for maybe a year and a half, and then I started to keep meeting people, and I thought, oh, I think this is a sign, to come back. And when I started up again, I just had this sense of, right, this is it now. I am absolutely clear about my trajectory, because I had a couple of experiences within that as well, which were extraordinary, and where I felt Charity's presence so strongly, and so it was so helpful that I came back in. And I don't know if you want me to tell you one of them, but I went on a course, and I went to Wales actually on this course, 3 weeks away from the family, kind of quite entrenched in it. And the place, it was a really amazing place that we went to. It was like a sort of a very old house, huge place. And the man who lived there had amassed a lot of literature. And I spotted, what is Sage Marg in the bookcase? And all I wanted to do was read that. And I thought, interesting. And because the course was about sort of angels and ascension, which suited a lot of people there. But for me, I realized it just I wasn't in the right place. I was in the right place at the right time, but that path wasn't for me. And I realized it when I asked the question of myself and of Charity, can I do both of these things? And I had this extraordinary dream. I thought I knew I kind of couldn't do both, because being a mum, it would have been very difficult. I had this extraordinary dream, which was that when I saw myself doing one thing, it was like my head and my right hand had been cut off.
Wow.
And then when I saw myself doing Sage Marg or Heartfulness, I was whole. And it was this extraordinary realization. As soon as I had that realization that that's my path, I felt a sense of calm and clarity. And when I came home, I finished the course, because I thought I only had 3 days to go, and I thought I'll just finish it. But I came home with a different perception, trajectory, and it was as if from that point on, nothing was going to get in my way. Nothing and no one. Strong willpower. It was like everybody can part the ways, no matter who stepped in my way after that. It was like, no, I know where I'm going, and I know who I'm following, and I'll be following them. You can come out of my life, as far as I'm concerned, before I will stop following them. So that was kind of, I think that was the pivotal moment, though.
And had you been to India at that point, or that was afterwards?
No, interestingly, I hadn't. So after that, that I went to India for the first time. I had met Chari. I'd met him in Scotland, in Broomley. And I wonder, no, I think I'd only met him in Broomley, actually. And even that was, you've met the teachers, and it can be quite an extraordinary
How was it for you?
It was when he left, I felt utterly bereft. I couldn't believe it. I thought, what is this? I don't really know this man, but I was so upset. It was like, and I realized I'd made a connection that I didn't even understand. But I came to India for the first, I'd come in my 20s, just a tour, really. But I came to see him in particular, Charity, for the first time, I think when I must have been about 40, actually, by that time, and went to Chennai and got to tour with him as well. And I had 3 weeks, and it was absolutely extraordinary. I mean, just out of this world. The difference in coming here to even, meeting the teachers in your own home space, just the experiences that you have. And that was a really funny story, because I thought, he said he was going to be touring, and I thought, great, I'll see a bit more of India. That was my thought, see a bit more of India. And we went to exactly the same places as I had been the first time I came. And I felt a bit cheated. I was like, but I've done that. Could we not go somewhere else,
Excuse me.
So, yeah. But yeah, it was magical.
Yeah.
It was really magical, actually, because it was just sort of learning so much from the inside, and being able to see so much more on the inside than ever before. So yeah.
So in the Spiritual Anatomy book you were talking about earlier, the inside is mapped out by the 13 points, or the 13 chakras. So do you feel like you could correlate any of those experiences to the points, or is there something that stands out from that trip or another time?
Interestingly, I think I was living in Edinburgh when Charity came, and I think I was moved from point 1 to point 2, and I had this hilarious experience, actually. I felt a lot calmer. I felt like, like everything just felt so much easier and calmer, and just at one with everything. But I also had a very pivotal moment. I was sitting, as you do, in a hot tub in a spa in Edinburgh on the rooftop of a hotel. And I just had this extraordinary moment where I just thought, I love everyone. And also just like, I'm co-creating with God. That's what my life is about now. And, experiences are interesting and fine. And just this moment of, bliss, which of course they never last. It changes and it shifts. But I think that was definitely something that I could, especially in hindsight, I can map out, oh, okay, that was that. And that was before I went to India, and before I sort of had, other kind of experiences that I would now relate very clearly to going through certain points as well. Because I was navigating from Babaji's works, Babaji's books, and I loved to read the point about the points and what they all meant and the experiences, because I was really curious and nosy, and I didn't want to miss out. I didn't want to be ignorant. So I was constantly sort of trying to map out, well, I'm feeling like this. What does that relate to? And where might it be? So the Yatra garden is, another experience on top of that, of course, and Daji's new book is even clearer. So I would say that it took hindsight for me to understand. I maybe wasn't very aware of what was happening until I had an experience of going, I think, from 0.5 to 6. And that was after after coming to India, and we had the great blessing of Charity came to stay at our house for one night in the UK. And the experience I had going from point 5 to 6, which is leaving the heart region to moving into the mind region, was much clearer, much clearer. So yeah, that was very interesting.
Can you feel that a differentiation between the experience of the heart region and the experience of shifting into the mind region?
Oh, it's vast. It's vast. It's like, how to put it? So in the heart region, everything feels quite hard. I call it, like wading through treacle a little bit, and everything feels personal. Mm. So it's like, it's all happening to me. And then when you're brought through, to the next stage where you're taken a little bit above, it's like looking down from the mountaintop, and everything feels much less physical, much less emotional, and much more subtle, much more beautiful as well. Just, and we're always going, what it's like. We're always going, I sort of liken it to a spiral, which is moving. So we sort of hit different experiences, and we're always moving forwards, hopefully. But the sense of it depersonalizes. It's like transcending something which feels much more heavy. And you feel a level of detachment which you didn't have before, and it's a gift, it's given,
I've heard some people, when they start, they're concerned about detachment. They're afraid that I like my life the way it is. I like my career. Mm-hmm. I don't want that. So how would you explain to somebody what that kind of detachment is like?
Yeah, I had the same sort of questions, but I just thought, well, I want to try it. And I looked at the masters or the teachers, they're living a life. They're not, unable to function. So I thought, it must be okay, because that's always been my reference point, is look at them, look at what they're like, what they're doing, and take your cue from that. So I thought, it seems okay. So, yeah, somebody else said this to me. It's an ego thing, It's like, it's the change of our awareness, of our perception. I haven't lost who I am in any way. I've just, in fact, really found who I am in a much more beautiful way. Because one of the reasons I started in the first place was I really didn't like who I was. I just was so unhappy with myself, and the thought that I was going to just sort of ossify, or this was it, and not feeling complete, not feeling comfortable in my own skin. And to when you progressively lose your sort of ego, it's so much easier, it's so much better. There's just nothing like it. And that was something that really struck me, was when I heard Charity. Somebody said to Charity, how can I help you, one day? And he said, forget yourself. And that went right in. And I thought, okay, that's really important. And it's not like you don't have an identity. You know who you are. But it shifts from being this focused on the outer stuff to a real centeredness, where you know yourself, you know what feels right for you, you don't have doubt, or very little, So that's the shift, is from this very much more ego-based identity to a soul-based identity, or spirit-based identity, for people who maybe don't believe they have a soul. It's something just so much more subtle, so much more connected to everything else. And the more you can forget yourself, the more you're there for other people. The less triggers you. It's just, well, you do know, because you're on that journey too.
It's a journey. And it is touching all the points as you go forward. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because the thing is, early on again, I was studying Babaji's commentaries as well on what do we feel even going through a point to understand it. So, there's that shift from we come in and it feels a bit like, oh, this is really hard. You feel like you've gone back to the start, and you've got to be careful because it's that feeling of being pulled back can make you discouraged and feel like dropping off. But actually, I always tell people this is a good sign. It means we're moving. We're not stagnating in that. And actually, you're just on the next step up of the ladder, whatever that may be, a point, a sub-point, whatever. You just got to keep going. So I liken it to, I see it happening to me even once a month, once a week, whatever. It just feels like things are just a little bit harder. And then you have your I am God moment. I used to dread that because my husband would even say, bit of an I am God moment there, Judith. And I'd go, yeah. Because I'm right, I'm all powerful. Sure, this is great. And then that transforms as well into, all is God. And then you go into all from God. And then you move into this sort of, I liken it to again, negation where you're getting churned up and it's almost like, you're having to divest yourself of the stuff that's holding you back to then merge at that point. So I was really interested in these things, and I can see it each time you go through the next cycle. You can become observant and ask for help. I just asked for insight. I asked for sort of understanding, and it would come. So I realized as well, I equated that with in the Bible, ask and you shall receive. That was the thing to ask for, is understanding, not money, not all these other material pieces of nonsense, which of course are essential, but if on your spiritual journey, you just need enough. So that was the thing that I found so extraordinary and joyful. I mean, good grief. We don't need to be miserable on this journey. There's just so much fun and joy you can have by tuning into yourself and laughing at yourself as well. I watched myself over the years do some really stupid things, but then I go, it's all right. You're a child. Don't worry about it. Each day's a new day. Brush it off, start again, move forward. Yeah. Don't have the guilt, which was what I was brought up with. Yeah.
I definitely can resonate with that. I have a tendency to be a bit by the books and a bit straight-laced, and then internalizing that as well. So I resonate as well with this feeling that this whole path is such an adventure.
Yeah.
I grew up in the era of Harry Potter, which is this magical, mystical.
Fabulous. But
I feel that Heartfulness is like if Harry Potter were real life. I mean, obviously we're not wizards and things like that. It's not about incanting magic. It's more that there's this kind of things that are really reality that from one standpoint seem fantastic. The more that you experience what you're saying, this clearing away of things or these little catalysts in having a profound experience, it's actually just you opening up to what's really there. But from where you were before, it's almost magical. And it's so fun. But then the trick, like you were saying, is that, it's this I am God moment. Then the ego creeps in because, I've gotten to such and such a place. And I think sometimes when we're having these kinds of dialogues, people who haven't had that experience or when you're a trainer as well, when you start a new meditator, I feel sometimes people want to say what their experience was afterwards, and that, I saw these colors, or there's this, and I think I had that when I started, this desire to have a certain kind of experience. So what would you speak to that about, just letting things unfold on their own and from what your experience was?
Yeah. mean, I started off, I think I was really quite ignorant to start with the whole thing. And what I did was I watched how my life changed and how I changed, because I didn't have particularly great experiences in meditation or anything like that. I mean, mine often came in strange moments. It wasn't like, I was in meditation to enjoy the meditation, to be honest. I just recognized that the meditation was necessary to help me manage my thoughts and manage myself and watch myself, to observe myself, because it's important, or helpful anyway, to be able to observe yourself in a kind way. So it's difficult to think back, because it's quite a long time since I started out. But I wasn't. I had a bit of. I had other people had amazing experiences in meditation. It would, I would hear them. I think I've got sort of meditation envy, or experience envy here. But then I would rein myself in and go, but you feel better. That's what matters. It's not about the experience. It's about what is it doing for you in your life. And I think going through pregnancy and having to learn to connect all the way through, like what we call constant remembrance, it was really set up for me at that time. And I realized as well through so many of my experiences that what I was being given was a gift, really. It's, I could do my practice and everything, but the real help was coming from the teacher or teachers, as I've had two now. And that was extraordinary, because I kept on changing even when I didn't practice. So what is the conclusion? The conclusion is you take one step forward, they take 100 towards you, kind of thing, I mean, that's so humbling, because the biggest trap for me in the whole spiritual journey is to be self-involved, the self-forgetfulness in a healthy way. And I mean, let it develop naturally, ask for it if you truly want it, and it will come. They will give that. But getting hung up on experiences isn't necessarily, to my mind, a good thing, because whatever is there, it can be attachment. And any attachment, whether it be the practice, the outer form of the teacher, whatever, is a trap. So, and I'm not meaning that in a heavy way, but it's just like, nobody traps us but ourselves. So we are the experiment, with the experimenter as well, like Daji said. And the joy in it for me is becoming childlike and innocent. It's that innocence that we can develop through letting go of our stuff, the heaviness, the preconceptions, the judgments, it goes on and on and on. The indoctrination, the cultish thing of religion, other people's views of you. Oh, let it go. It's just, as you say, magical. It's miraculous, because once you can get to that place where you actually don't care who thinks what of you, they have no effect on you. You are the one, that can determine your destiny as well, like Daji said. The freedom is just not just magical, miraculous, Harry Potter-ish. I love Harry Potter. It's just like, it's just beyond comprehension, and we all have to realize it for ourselves. There's nothing I can say to anyone else that's going to persuade them. Why would they believe me? But I think it's, we begin to see it in other people. We begin to see that inner joy of discovery and going on the fairground ride, which I love. After this, we're going to Japan, and there's a Harry Potter ride I have booked for. And I mean it. It's like, yo. So yeah, it's just, I used to feel life was so bleak, and now life is magical, and even beyond life is magical. It's like what's to come is an adventure that's just the next adventure. So, that those fears that we have, those fears of separation, fears of dying and all these sorts of things, they can go. This whole practice is just, I just feel so happy that it was like I was found. It wasn't even, you kind of find it when you're ready. And then, like me, you can drop off for a while, but hopefully you realize, oh, it's still going on. I still have that link. And you come back brighter, stronger, and more determined. So even if people have breaks, I am always consoling them, go, don't worry about it. It's fine. You trust how you feel. Trust what you're doing. And I'm always at the end of the phone. You don't worry about it. You let people go their way and you wait. And, they're always there. They're always going to come.
What were some of those things you felt dropped off for you?
Oh, gosh, so many. So many. I suppose in the earlier stages, the need to be seen, the need to achieve, according to the world. It's hard. I know for people as we grow up in our teens, in our 20s, we have so many expectations of ourselves. And I think that really dropped off. I think the feeling of not having found what I was looking for, when that went, oh my Lord, it was just, that was so precious, that realization of, okay, yeah, this is it. And, you're doing all of that while being in a normal life. It's not, you don't have to leave anything. In fact, everything you have around you is your teacher, yes, as hard as it may be. And that sort of realization that the hardest lessons are the best lessons. So letting go of the feeling of pain of learning, and the shift from, I think that's a real heart to mind region shift, is that sort of the realization that it doesn't have to be suffering. It may start as suffering, but it becomes opportunity, that shift from, that lovely sort of going from, oh, this feels so tough, this feels so hard, and which is perfectly natural, perfectly normal. It shifts into, okay, that felt uncomfortable. What am I to learn from this? That was just superb.
And the difficulty can coexist with the acceptance.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. That, again, that's back to trying to be observant and not to be, not to sort of be hard on yourself about it. To remember at each moment, love yourself in this journey. Give yourself a bit of love. How would you treat someone else in that position? You would be kind to them, hopefully. As a trainer, we would hope we'd be kind to them. And just as soon as you can bring in love into the picture, the ego drops off, the blame drops off, the guilt drops off. And for me, I felt like the more I've realized of the journey, the more grateful I am to our teachers that they can help us cross these stages. I mean, I don't know where I'm going, so I need that guidance. I need that person who's been there, done that, to prompt, to push, to cajole or whatever. And the duty I have is to cooperate and to do my best to be grateful, to never forget who gave me what I have now. That's really important, because otherwise we spoil the work they've done. It's like you've got the best teacher ever, and if you don't listen to them or try to cooperate with them, then it's a bit unfair. Yeah, a bit unfair. And I think as a Catholic, that was helpful. Being brought up in a religion helped me to have a sense of someone who was out there who was helping, whether it be angels, whether it be the Christ essence, I don't know, but I think that was helpful. It removes you from the picture. Anything that can remove you from within this whole thing it makes you feel lighter. It helps a lot.
I definitely feel, coming from a Judeo-Christian background as well, that there was a shift in understanding what a guru really was, what a guide really was. I feel that there's, understandably and probably with a grain of salt, a lot of skepticism around following somebody, because we've seen so many examples where it's been to people's detriment, and I think we should approach it with caution. But, what was your experience when you started meditation and then finding out, oh, there's this guide, and what is his role, and how do you relate to him?
I was a bit nonplussed at first. I think, I was told to go and sit with Charity. I thought, okay, fair enough. It's fine. And as I say, it was when he left at that point that I suddenly realized, goodness me, there's something's happened here. But I realized that there's no push from their side. None. They're giving all the time. Incredible. And I had another epiphany going, well, if I want to be like that, I've got to allow them to help me change and allow them to every aspect of my life. There can't be brackets. It's like, church on a Sunday, you behave for half an hour and then you leave and you start messing about as soon as you've gone. I thought, I've even got to invite them and be willing for them to come into every experience of my life. So I actually did, after visiting India for the first time, I invited Charity. I couldn't believe it when he came. I mean, he said, yes, I'm coming, because we lived near Glastonbury in England at that point. And he wanted it was on his sort of list of things to do to come to Glastonbury. So he came, and that was in itself just, incredible that this man would come to my own home. It was scary at first, but it was just brilliant. What happened in that time was just so precious. And it wasn't even anything particularly esoteric, but it was watching him, close up and seeing what he was doing and giving. And I would have been a total cretin to have doubted after that, really and truly. My experiences of being close to him were such that I would have had to be a complete idiot if I'd not believed in this person. And I don't think everybody has to do that, but look at what they're giving, look at what they're doing, and see, try to put your own prejudices aside and fears aside, and then you begin to realize all the things they're giving, and even the tough stuff. I've had some tough experiences. I had a couple of tough experiences with Chari, and it was hard. But I realized, again, in hindsight, you've got to wait. You've got to let it percolate. What's going on here? And for me, I had a really strong ego. Powerful. Anything I thought I could do, I would do. It's like, no, I don't. Men, what are they? I didn't even identify particularly as being female because I had 3 sisters. So it's like, that's not a man's job, but I can do that. If they can do that, I can do that. So even the idea that the masters or teachers a man never stopped me from thinking, I can do this, because I think that's what a lot of people get in their way, is like, if you believe it's not possible, it won't be possible. The power of the mind, it'll happen for you. But if you believe the opposite, it'll also happen for you. So I didn't get caught up in too much, I think, I know people find it difficult, the present teachers, male and so on and so forth.
Oh,
yeah, whatever.
I just meant more the sense of having a guru.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. But also this idea of having the guru, to me, it's any teacher's necessary. I don't know how to drive a car before, somebody teaches me. So it's the same on the spiritual journey for me. It's just like, or personal transformation. you need a teacher to help you. That was it. So yeah, I've always felt it was utterly essential. Actually, it's great if you can do without it. Congratulations, but that wasn't my lot. Oh no, I absolutely needed a teacher, and I needed somebody who would help me get past myself and my ego.
I think I didn't realize that that's what I was doing, that I kept looking for someone, and I kept looking at different people, and no one kind of lived up to it until I found Heartfulness. I wonder, you mentioned that Charji came to where you lived because it was kind of on his checklist. And I think it's funny that when you went to India first to travel with him, you didn't get to any of the places on your checklist, but then it was inverted that when you happened to invite him, it was someplace he intended to go anyway. So
yeah, I never thought about it like that. That's a lovely thought, actually. Yes. Yeah.
So what about, so you're saying having him there and observing him, you felt like it was just so obvious to be to admire this person or to just see him as he was. So for someone who wasn't there, what are the things that you observed that helped you come to that realization or just matter-of-fact experience?
I think it's a selflessness. It was just working all the time and being with people, and the real kindness. Now, we're all, the teachers have to sometimes, they give us what we need if we're open to it, not what we want. So that can come in different guises. So, you might have an experience with them which is utterly beautiful. And then the next time that, you might get rubbed up a little bit with something that you need to let go of, but you're clinging on to. And I had that experience at one point that obviously I think my ego was very much in the way. And I needed a little bit more work, is a good way to put it. The experience I've had with Daji has always been utterly lovely. Actually, I ended up having lunch with him one time when we were in Montpellier, and he was so considerate and so kind, and picked up on so much at the time. So I think that's what really impressed me as well, is their ability to feel what people need. It's that, how extraordinary is that, to not have any focus on the self, but just to be really present to the people around you. It's lovely, and to feel that calm that they have, that calm that you can usually feel in being in their presence. But at the same time, the practice gives us that too. It really does. If we can engage with it enough, it brings the qualities that the teachers have right into us. So, even if we don't meet them, we can transform just as easily, because that's, the practice is then. It doesn't matter whether you believe in the teacher, you believe in God, you don't have to believe a thing, You can still change, because it's a practice. It doesn't discriminate. It doesn't care what you believe or not. So that's the beauty. And it's, of course, that's via transmission. Transmission doesn't discriminate. In terms of somebody's a Muslim, somebody's a Christian, who cares, So, yeah, it's kind of this whole thing, isn't it? It's a long journey of realization. Realization is never really fixed for me. It's like unfolding. So that's the other beauty and excitement of the journey, is that constant learning the next thing, that awakening to, oh, right. Oh, I didn't notice that before, or I see that now. And just following in the footsteps of the people who've gone in before you. So we're not slaves. We're not blindly following someone. We are constantly being given the understanding, the realization of what they have gained before us. I see it as a long line of, people constantly evolving, or a great big sort of, I always have this picture, I always used to picture people sort of all following together kind of thing. And there's in some ways it's bizarre as well. It feels like there's no higher or lower. There's just awakening to it. We're going from, Babaji, I think he said, there was not much difference between the way that you start and the way that you finish, but that difference is everything, kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? It's just, you're still you. You're still the same person. In so many ways, you've still got that same identity, but you're just transformed in your view of it all, almost. Yeah, because I think people do worry about what's going to happen to me, and don't worry. Oh goodness me, it's so much better.
Yeah.
And I am not truly transformed. I'm on the journey like everyone else. I suppose I'm just more and more grateful, and also I realize more and more how much more help you need the further you go forward. The more help you need. Actually, it's a sort of a paradox. An invertendo, as Charity used to say, and I used to feel like it was going to break my head to try and understand what does he mean. Yeah, funny.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I'll tell you a little bit more about a funny experience I had, and I did feel a little bit slow and dense after this experience, because I thought to myself, oh geez, it's just funny how other people can sort of make you so aware of something that you've maybe missed. So I introduced a friend to Heartfulness, and she is highly sensitive. She's one of these people who, she did Bach flowers and understood everything about it. She was, she's very intuitive. And she'd been doing a different practice. And I said, why don't you try this one I'm doing? And so she came up to me one day. She said, Judith, do you realize what you've found? And I went, what do you mean? She said, you have found the rocket of spirituality. She said, I said, what are you talking about? She said, you know how like most of us are going on a bike or maybe on a train? She said, this is spiritual rocket fuel. Okay, we are on a rocket in Saj Marg, as it was at the time. And I thought, and it sort of, it did dawn on me, and I went, oh my goodness, you're so right. You're so right. I hadn't realized it, and she had. And there's a lovely lesson in this, that she was literally just started, and her vision, her insight was greater than mine. And I've found this as I've gone along as well. It's absolutely irrelevant how long we've been meditating for. Yes. People come when they're ready, and some of them are way more ready than I was when I started. And that's the beauty, I think. It's, again, that invertendo. People often think, oh, you've been meditating forever, you must be this or that. You can have someone walking in the door and they're already ahead of you. And that was so funny. I actually laughed about it afterwards, because I was so grateful to her, because she helped me really realize what it was that I'd found in this. Because she had done a lot of meditation, and she recognized, she felt transmission and went, wow, what is this? And she did Reiki and things like that. So she was used to working with energy. And I was going along quite oblivious, I was like, oh, this is a nice practice. Oh, this is lovely. I hadn't quite sort of engaged with it. So for me, there were always like a series of little events that would help me to understand things. And that's why I'm always saying, we need to be patient, I think, with ourselves as well, and kind to ourselves, and look back at, well, what was that about? Because in the moment, we often do miss things. I really do. Undoubtedly.
More than we can conceive of.
And in my case, it was over many years. I missed the point. But I had enough insight to realize that I needed to keep going, because it was changing me. But it was, these moments happen when someone else comes and tells you, by the way, tap, tap, tap. What planet are you on that you didn't realize? I was like, oh, I know.
Or like what you were saying about when you have an experience and you're not quite sure what it is, and then you write it down and forget about it, as they say. And then, however long later, you realize, oh, that's what was happening, whether it was correlated with a point or some condition or something. That sometimes you need a little space, a little distance before you really integrate or understand what it is.
Yeah, I've always likened it to, you can have the realization of something, and it's a knowledge-based thing, or you get a tiny little experience of it, but then you have to wait for it to percolate, and eventually you become it. So you will have an insight which is really helpful, and then you forget it, and you're like, what was that? What was that? And I trust now that the sort of the vision of it comes first, then it percolates, and you just have to try to catch it in that moment and go, okay, I'd like to understand more of that. And then it will percolate, and eventually it becomes not just your experience, but your way of being. So it's that sort of it's like a coffee percolator. You put the coffee in at the top and wait till it percolates. So the coffee's like, the experience that you have just in a moment. You might catch something, could be walking around or any time, and then bit by bit you drink it and it sinks in, kind of thing. Yeah.
Well, it was so lovely connecting with you and knowing a little bit more about your journey.
Oh, thank you.
I hope you enjoyed the last few hours of your visit here.
Yeah.
And we'll see you next time we converge in this place again, or on a conference call.
Oh, thanks, Emma. Yeah, I look forward to it always.
All right. Safe journey, and until then.
Thank you. Very good to be here.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of GhanaCast. Do subscribe to GhanaCast on YouTube, Instagram, and Spotify. Until the next episode, from the entire GhanaCast team, namaste and goodbye.